Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, joined with my two co-hosts, Goody and Hall. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode, which is titled Weapons Dealer. We'll be joined by a guest here very, very shortly. But the latest and greatest news, free agency has wrapped up. It is starting to get into draft season. Pro days are this week. A bunch of prospects are being looked at by, seems like, every single team. But boys, how are you doing? Goody, how was your weekend?
Doing good. Weekend was good. Didn't really do too much. Just kind of laid low. Hung out. Um, Watching March Madness. Obviously, some good games. The start of March Madness is always fun. Kicking that off. So yeah, it was a pretty cool weekend. Just chilling. It felt like a football kind of couch kind of weekend. Just watching sports constantly all day. But it wasn't football, obviously. But we'll be there soon.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I used to be big into March Madness, not so much anymore. But I know Hall is, because Hall is a betting man, and so I'm sure that he's been placing some wagers on some games.
Here and there, nothing like crazy. But I didn't even watch any games yesterday. I went to a winery. My mom's for her birthday the other day, so I went
Pinkies
to a
out.
winery.
Look at you.
Pinkies out.
Yeah. Had a couple glasses of vino.
Some vino, yeah. Jeremy Reeves had his wedding over the weekend. Adam Peters and Dan Quinn were in attendance, which congratulations to the Reeves. And then he got a contract extension on top of it. I wanted to ask this question to
Nice
you,
little wedding
boys.
gift.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask this question to you, boys. And Goody, I'll go to you first. Where did Washington add more through free agency, on defense or offense?
Did they add more on defense or offense? I'm going to say defense. I think the surface is going to describe defense in terms of addition. We got a lot of bodies in here. The edge room alone, we brought in, you guys, a couple linebackers, edge guys. So I would say defense. I think we tipped the scale that way.
I'm the complete opposite. I think it's offense.
Okay.
I think
Talk to me.
the re-signing of Laramie Tunsil was a big one, on top of adding Chigakonkwo, going out and get Van Jefferson, and then scooping up Dami Brownback, which his contract was absolutely insane when you look at the contract details. It was like $1.75 million for one season, which is absolutely just staggering. And then they added Jerome Ford, of course, Rashad White, and then brought back Jeremy McNichols. So 4 running backs on the roster at the moment. I thought they did a very good job of supplying more talent, obviously re-signing Treylon Burks as well. I think offense is where you're really looking at it to say, where did they invest more in? And I think they did that offensively. What about you, Hall? Do you disagree?
100% disagree, and it's not because obviously they added more bodies to the defensive side of the ball, so that's not the reason why. But I just think there's more potential for the impact on the defense with the guys they've signed so far. I do love the Chig signing. I think he's poised for a breakout year with Jaden and in this offense. But if you just look at guys like Oweh, Chason, what's the dude from the Chiefs? Amenahu, guys like that. I think there's more potential for guys to have an impact on the defensive side of the ball. I'll say they've signed more guys that can have an impact on the defensive side of the ball. They've added more guys that can have an impact on the defensive side of the ball, as opposed to the offense where they re-signed Laramie Tunsil. Obviously, he's going to have a huge impact.
Chris
protecting the
Paul,
blind side.
Andrew Wiley, Allegretti.
That's actually, it's funny because I think the last episode we were on here with Mitch, I had brought that up, looking at the free agencies on both sides of the ball, it was pretty much even. I think it was like 16 and like maybe 17. And I think the question was, where do you see like us bringing in more guys or retaining more guys? I wonder where that actually sits right now.
I'm with you there.
It's probably close, but no, I just think that. And yes, they retained the guys on the offensive line, gave them extensions, whatever you want to call it. But like I said, I just think there's more room for impact players that they signed on the defensive side of the ball. Like between Owe, Chason, and Aminu, that could be what, 10, 15 sacks between the three of those guys, 15 plus, something like that, as opposed to just like a guy like, because you can't really count like left tackles like stats other than like pressures and whatnot. But as opposed to a guy like Chig who could go for like 60, 70 catches, which I would love that for Chig. He was my 1A tight end signing, so glad they definitely added him. But
He was just in Japan this past week. You saw that
yeah,
samurai photo of him. He's
I
got a
know he was
samurai Jack thing
looking
going on.
super. Oh yeah, he was looking super anime-ish. It was kind of looking kind of tight, but
Yeah, he had the
yeah,
whole get up, dude.
yeah, like literally the whole samurai get up. But yeah, I just think that the the potential for the guys that they sign on the defense to have a more impact on the team overall as of right now than just say a guy like Chig who could have a breakout year, and then Larry Tunsil, who we know obviously is going to be a top 2 or 3 left tackle this upcoming year.
Protecting Jaden Daniels is number one, first and foremost for any offensive draft pick kind of subject matter that's brought up is protecting Jaden. This way, you need more weapons to protect Jaden to be able to project him for the future. And I think adding in the offensive line and others, because you could look at the cornerback room and say, is that really filled? Now, if you look at the other aspects on, because defensively, the safety room, I think, has 6 or 7 guys in it at the moment. Linebacker room is sitting pretty middle, I would say. You probably feel good about it, but not great. Defensive line room, obviously
And I
very,
forgot about Leo Chanel. I think he's going to have a big ass impact too on this team. So
yeah, it's still offense that got added more. Just because the defense, the cornerback room hasn't been added more to, you could probably add another linebacker in here as well. So I do think that offense is probably more so in protecting Jaden, offering him weapons. Because look at offense, running back room has 4 in it. You got 4 tight ends. You got
also that was
offensive line right now.
disrespectful saying they added Van Jefferson. Like, please don't bring that guy up. That's like literally
What's
Chris
wrong with
Moore.
Van Jefferson, bro?
He's one tier above Chris Moore. That man better not ever see the field.
He's that's a harsh one because Chris Moore was tough to deal with last year, but you don't want to cast that on a new guy so soon. But hey,
How dare
might be
you,
right.
sir?
Hey, all I can do is go off the track record. And
How
the track
dare
record
you,
says, like,
sir?
he's Chris Moore. He's just a younger Chris Moore, a veteran in the league that's bouncing around.
It was cool though hearing because he played with Traylon Burks in Tennessee, so it was cool hearing his view on his time with Traylon and speaking on him being a dog. So seems to be a common thing about Traylon Burks. So I expect big things this year.
See, you see how good he answered that? He didn't downplay. He didn't shoot down what Van Jefferson can do for this football team. He just said something that was cool that Van Jefferson did. He completely just took that away.
I'm glad he
Didn't.
propped this guy up. That's what sideline guys need to do. They need to clap it up for their guys.
That's not funny. That's not funny. You say that until next season when we have those issues at wide receiver, and then Van
Yeah,
Jefferson comes
that's
through for
but
us.
like that's my whole point. If Van Jefferson's on the field, we have a huge issue consistently. Obviously, he might get a rotation here and there if he's not on the practice squad, but if he's in there consistently, we have a huge issue again, just like last year. That's my overall point.
I got you. Well, it's Pro Day week, boys, and we got some fan questions rolling in. This first one is from James Bonato. Long time since he's asked a question. Thank you, James. So, Hall, he says, love it how we are addressing filling the holes in our roster. Where is the talk about ways to address Jaden Daniels' injury-prone body? Is he being under center instead of being in the shotgun the answer? That should be the commander's number one assignment in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, you can go back to last year where they showed that he added like what 15 pounds of like muscle or something like that. But at the end of the day, he's still going to be slight of frame. And yeah, like Kyle was talking about earlier, they fortified the line for the most part. We'll see what happens at the center. There's going to be a battle. Allegretti's going to be the guy or not. But for the most part, they fortified the line. They've brought in a stable of running backs. Obviously, there's all this buzz about Jeremiah Love. We'll see if that happens or not come April. But they got the running back stable where they've got They got Bill. They got the pass catching backs and Rashad White and Jeremy Nichols, Mick Nichols, who also Rashad White can run the ball as well here and there. And then they got the thumper to replace Chris Rodriguez and Ford. So we'll see how that room shakes out. They add anyone, whatever it may be. But yeah, under center is definitely going to help him out. I think that with Cliff, it was all about like the shotgun, obviously, and like the RPOs and spreading the offense out and using the quarterback run game as part of the offense and opening up the offense for that's what Cliff was his offense did. But I think Blau put him under center more. Like I still think they're gonna have him running the ball here and there. Obviously he's gonna scramble and make plays when it's necessary, but they're going to have him on bootlegs and stuff like that, rollouts, quarter rollouts, stuff like that. So just get him outside the pocket, away from all the potential hazardous stuff that can go down in the pocket with guys falling around your legs, knees, stuff like that, which is kind of basically what happened last year for the most part in that Dallas game. So I just think that getting him outside the pocket, getting clearer passing lanes outside the pocket, making plays outside, let him use his athleticism outside the pocket as well, but also fortifying the line so that you go back to the Detroit Lions game last year in the playoffs. We saw with protection, he can get surgical from the pocket. I'll keep saying that till I can't talk anymore. So, yeah, I definitely think that Blau's offense is going to help him with the the injury side of things.
Yeah, it's funny because the shotgun pistol type offense that Cliff likes to run, the West Coast stuff, one of my biggest gripes about it was the lack of the play action fake of faking it to the running back at the handoff. It just seemed so vanilla, not very detail oriented. I think somebody like Peyton Manning has really invested a lot of his time into making it look realistic. I think Aaron Rodgers takes it very seriously as well. They want to be able to Houdini that ball away from the stomach of the running back, to be able to force those defenses to feel like it is a running play to come up, make a play on the ball, just to give you a little bit extra time. And that shotgun for the past 2 years, it hasn't really been all that magical, so to speak. It was not fooling anybody. And I think under center allows you a little bit more flexibility and time, it being able to allow your wide receivers to gain more depth on their routes, right? Instead of it just being quick, here, fake handoff, look out. You're turning your back, you're trying to give the football to the running back, then bringing it back, and then looking. So you're giving your wideouts a little bit more time to get deep. You're giving more of time for defenders to kind of slow their momentum in their rush so that they're looking to see if it is handed off or not. It just adds a little bit more time in that regard. And it gives you a different sort of structure in offense where as much as we can't sit here and say that Jaden didn't have the ability to sit in the pocket and diagnose out of the shotgun. Absolutely, he had all the ability in the world to. It's just the way that it was played out, I think it took guys away from their strengths at times. And you kind of saw that last season where Jaden was running for his life and doing what he needed to do. Whereas this, I think it's going to be that more run-focused, and it's going to be making defenders think a little bit more. And more of that hard-nosed power run game, which has really been necessary for Washington there, James. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a combination of, obviously putting him in the best position to, keep himself out of harm's way. But at the end of the day, it's the contact sport, right? So these things are going to be inevitable. Doing little things to try to improve that probability of him getting hurt. I do believe him being under center could have, some advantage to that. In terms of like, is the team focused on that, or if they're addressing that or not? I think that's a question that you could probably answer yourself. And you would have to assume if you have your franchise, quarterback finally, I'm pretty sure that the common word is like, all right, how do we keep this guy on the field, right? We saw the impact of him being injured last year and how much that trickled down into the entire record of the season. The media, everything spiraled, fan base, everything went crazy because Jaden was only available for 4 full games, right? So there's only so much you can actually do, right? You're going to get the people up front to protect. We got a nice little solid line. You want to change up the scheme to make it a little bit less, wild, wild west, if you will, and just keep everything compact. Lean on the run game heavily. And like we all know, Jaden has the ability to pick apart a defense at any given time. So if your offense is kind of drilling like, yeah, we're running this down your throat, and then you kind of switch the, hit the light switch and just say, hey, Jaden, I need you to drop back on a couple of drives and really pick them apart. Defenses are going to have their hands up in the air like, dude, we don't know what to do here, right? So I think it's a team effort. It's a combination of the scheme. Jaden, obviously, being a heady player out there on the field is kind of hard, in the midst of it, right? If you've ever been a competitor, it's not easy to just be like, oh, let me just stop. You kind of want to keep going, but it's definitely have to be a concerted effort across the building.
Yeah, and I know James. I'm sure that given the base off your question, the injury-prone body of Jaden, that you didn't like that he was in the flag football game this past weekend, which brought up, we talked on the pod last night on Red Zone and the Lad for the Commanders Draft Show about our flag football days and how much fun they were and playing in Rockville. And I was talking about that time that Pierre punched that dude in the face twice, which was
that was funny.
dude, that team was so annoying, dude.
I know. I'm glad we won, and it was even funnier that he punched him in the face afterwards.
Yeah, and he's bleeding. His girlfriend was screaming at me, and then my wife went onto the field to attack her, and I was like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "She's yelling at you." I was like, "I don't know why she's yelling at me. I didn't do anything. I didn't touch anybody."
I thought it was about to be a Royal Rumble. I thought it was about to be like a big like team on team fight, and Pierre was just like, "Wow!" And they were like, "Yeah, no, we good on that."
Yeah, we're good.
Clearing the benches.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, the dude that started the whole thing, because he was pissed off that they lost the game, of course, and anybody that plays football, you know how these things kind of build up throughout a game. People are talking, it's getting more and more rowdy. At the end of the game, they lose, and the dude who got picked off, he was a wide receiver, charges after Murph, who picked him off, running back, and ends up like tackling him. And then that guy, throughout the whole scuffle, that guy was nowhere to be found. Like, he ran home. I don't know what happened. He tackled Murph and then dipped. He didn't want any
because
parts
he
of
saw a huge ass Pierre coming and was like, "Oh no!"
Oh, my good times. That wasn't the only fight we got in either. Flag football is fun, man. But I will say this, like, I will say
I
this.
tell Courtney all the time, I'm like, man, I miss those days so much. I'm like, if someone just got a team together, I would hop on that team so quickly.
All right, and I've speaking of flag football, I saw Brandon Martin's Facebook post about Crocs and throwing all of his son's Crocs away, and now I'm debating on if I should do that. But we've had some good time with flag, and I've always said flag, it should be with linemen. I don't know why they don't have linemen for the Olympic style way they're doing it. I mean, I get it. It's just 7-on-7 at that point with flags, but not the same. But let's get in this other question we have. This one was submitted by the Colonel. Thank you, James. That was fantastic. His question is, Goody, are we comfortable enough with free agency that we can go best player available in the draft, or are we still chasing an edge rusher or wide receiver?
No chase. We are not chasing. I think Adam Peters, really, really kind of proved his worth in terms of not only addressing every, Washington fans' needs and cries, but just really sustaining this roster. And basically, it happened overnight, right? The gates opened, free agency opened, and there was a slow start, right? You're just kind of looking at the faucet. You just did all the repairs. You turn it on, and all you get is like a little trickle. You're like, damn, I thought I fixed it. What's going on? You're freaking out. And then all it took was just a little bit of time, and the floodgates started to flow. So he was able to really fill out this roster with depth, not only depth but also quality starters. Not only quality starters, but also players that are ascending, right? So he was able to check so many boxes in terms of getting these players in this building. Not only just filling the roster, but adding depth, getting star talent, and also getting people like in their ascension. So I think it was above and beyond what he did and how he did it. And, something like that, after you go through that, even the first 3 days, 4 days, 5 days after, he was still adding pieces. We saw Jerome Ford, we saw Diami, we saw Hall's boy Van Jefferson come through the building. So he was still really insulating this. He wasn't done. So I feel like between when the last signing happened, I think was probably Jefferson and those guys, he was able to kind of kick back, kick his feet up, maybe have himself a little steak, and then get ready for this draft. But no pressure, no chasing. He's gonna go and pick his guy, and that's awesome position to be in.
Yeah, and a lot of credit to Logan Paulson. Last time that I talked to him, he had said that Adam Peters in free agency was going to build out this team enough to where they could go best player available in the draft, and a lot of credit to him, Colonel. But I will finish your questions after we get talk to our guy, Mr. Mitch Tischler, who now joins us. What's up, Mitch? Thanks for joining us, man.
How you doing?
Doing fantastic, brother. It's a beautiful
What's
Monday.
going on?
Weather is starting to warm up a little bit,
Oh,
and so we're everyone's feeling a little bit good. Feeling all right, except for the insects are out. The wasps are. Even though I destroyed the wasp nest out back, they still seem to be coming. I don't know where they're coming from. They come from the ground. They're like Eagles fans. They're just coming out of everywhere. But to
I
start,
gotta say, you're wearing your shades. You must be feeling yourself a little bit.
no, it's because of Jaden's flag football game where did you see his sunglasses?
I did, yes.
Yeah, he had the blade sunglasses going on.
Those
so I thought that
those some Goggins goggles.
Yeah. How do you don't know about David Goggins? Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Who doesn't know about David Goggins?
I didn't think Hall did. Hall lives under a rock, man.
I watch TV, man. What are you talking about?
You just listen to sports radio. That's all you listen to. I asked this.
Hey, that's okay.
I know it's all right. Especially 980. But I will say this, Mitch. At number 7, where are you at now post free agency? Are you leaning in any sort of way? Are you going best player available, or do you think it weighs at this point, realistically looking at the draft board, that it'd weigh more offense based on who will possibly be there?
I think they've set themselves up to be free to make whatever pick they like. I think we've seen, that they kind of aren't always entirely picking for need. You saw last year with them taking Josh Connerly. Not that tackle wasn't a need, but presumably you could have thought they could have gotten by for a year with Brandon Coleman out there. They decided that he was the best guy at the time, and that's who they ended up going with. I think they've allowed themselves. I've been very impressed with what they've done in free agency. They filled a ton of holes. I talked about them wanting to spend a bunch of money on defense and allow yourself to do what you need to do in the draft. I've been on Carnell Tate for 2 months now, 3 months now. I'll stick there. That's who I think that they should take. That's who I hope they take. That's where I'm at.
And what is it about Carnell Tate that makes you be on him being brought here at number 7?
I think that he is, first of all, I think that you have to start looking at positional value. And this is when I'm put on my GM hat. I'm not saying what they're going to do, just for me, when I put on my GM hat, I look at positional value, and I want to take a guy at a position where there's really not a whole lot at the receiver position after this season. We'll see what happens with Terry. Obviously, hope he comes back. Hope hope it works out. He has a great season. They bring him back for big time money, but who knows what's going to happen there. After Terry, you can talk about them spending picks on Jalen Lane and Luke McCaffrey and whoever else. Obviously, those guys aren't big time playmakers. They're not number one type receivers. And so I want to start building up, positions that don't have that depth. And I think you got to start addressing that in the draft. And when I look at the other receivers that are available, I think there are relatively big dings against some of those other guys, whether it be injury or hands or whatever it may be. Obviously, Carnell Tate didn't run the fastest 40 at the combine, but he's a solid receiver that can run the full route tree, has shown really good hands, and has shown his ability to get himself open against big-time defenses in college football.
And I have to ask you this question because Hall was going to be irate if I didn't. What about Van Jefferson? It doesn't move the needle for you?
Sure. He's a project. He's a flyer. You hope that he turns into something, but you look at his track record, and I don't think you can expect that he's going to go out there and replace Terry McLaurin next season, 2 seasons from now, and be your number one receiver.
That was my only point.
Yeah, you didn't voice that, but he was crapping. He was crapping on Van Jefferson. Mitch.
He's not. It's like, oh, we got Van Jefferson, Super Bowl. It's 2027 Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like, no.
And the fact of the matter is, if you try and go bring in a receiver from the outside, you're going to spend either an arm and a leg. I'm glad they didn't spend 30+ mil on Alec Pierce, even though they did try to. But that's an overpay for that player. Maybe he turns into a superstar, but for what we've seen out of him, so far, it's an overpay. Do you want to go send whatever the heck the Eagles are going to ask for a player like, AJ Brown. I think that AJ Green would be great
Yeah.
back in the day. But you look at these top receivers, they don't become available. It's not really easy to bring in a top receiver if you don't get them through the draft or work them through your system. And so I think that's why Terry has extra value to this team, and why the deal last year should have gotten done quicker. But I think it's why you have to start planning for the future. And to me, there's a lot of places you can plan for the future at. It doesn't have to be wide receiver. Just me, if I'm wearing my shades and my GM hat and smoking my corncob pipe, whatever it may be, I'm taking Cornell Tate and running to the podium.
GM's wearing a corncob pipe. That'd be hysterical. Sorry, Goody, do you have a question for Mitch?
Yeah. So everything right now is pretty fresh. The spirits are pretty high. Last year is in the high rearview mirror. Going into this season with two new coordinators on both sides of the ball, do you feel like either Blau or Jones has who would have more pressure to perform?
Honestly, you're going to hate this answer, but I think Dan Quinn has the most pressure. These guys are both first-year guys. You hope that if things go south, I don't know that they will, but if things go south, you'd hope that they don't throw out the throw out the baby with the bathwater and get rid of Blau and Jones as well. But there's a very real scenario here that I think all fans have to kind of wrap their heads around. I think these guys will be successful at coordinator. You hope that they're successful at coordinator. There's no guarantees. And you look at all these players that they brought in on defense for Durante Jones's look, that's a different kind of player than this team brought in last offseason. So you're looking at, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10 new defensive players before we even get to the draft. I mean, this thing, they're going to have to get out quick, and they're going to have a much more intense training camp and off-season program where these guys are going to be up and running, because as much as Blau isn't brand new, because at least he's been around Jaden some, for Durante Jones, they're going to be starting from square one, and there's a whole lot of guys who are going to have to learn a whole lot of new systems. So there's pressure across the board, but to me, if Dan Quinn can't, put on his head coaching hat and corncob pipe and get things done, then I don't know that any of it matters what happens with the coordinators.
Everyone's got a corncob pipe nowadays.
I don't know where that came from, but all of a sudden I'm just envisioning Vince Lombardi on the Green Bay Packers side, hell, the Redskins sidelines,
Right.
smoking that pipe and doing his thing.
All right, now the next question I have for you, in regards to with what Washington is doing for Jaden, and offensively and defensively, who would you say would be who's going to be, your guess, the most productive free agent acquisition?
Chig.
Chig?
I am so in on Chig Okonkwo. I mean, he's a Maryland guy, so I've obviously watched him for a long time. When we started the off-season talk, I talked about Chig being one of the better fits. Obviously, Isaiah Likely, was a little bit of a bigger name and whatnot, but you look at their numbers together, and it's pretty dang close in terms of the two. And you consider that Likely played in an offense with a MVP quarterback, and Chig has played in an offense with, obviously short of this year, a bunch of nobodies throwing him the football. I think what Chig does best is his after the catch, his athleticism and his speed and his quickness, I think, are an element that this offense doesn't really have. I don't think the middle of this Commanders offense, whether it was a Redskins offense, Washington football team offense, or Commanders, has had a player like Chig since Jordan Reed was here. I think that they can be kind of similar. I think you can look at Chig and think about, I don't know that Chig is quite who Jordan Reed was, but I think you can start thinking about how that offense can move with him, and having a threat in the middle of the field, I think, will go a long way for helping out Jaden, help the run game, help Terry, help free safeties. I think there's a lot of different things it can do.
I got you. Hall, you got a question for Mitch?
Yeah. How do you like the running back room so far? How they've built it out, and do you think that how would you feel about them adding a guy like Jeremiah Love now that Schefter stirred the pot again with the whole Jeremiah Love to Washington thing today?
He knows how to do it, man.
He does. What I'll say is, I think Jeremiah Love is going to be a excuse me.
He couldn't even finish
Fantastic
that. You hear that,
player.
Hall?
Yeah. I think Jeremiah Love is going to be a fantastic NFL player. I'm going to have to dig up some of my research because I haven't quite gotten through it, but I was talking about this last year about Ashton Genty. Top 10 rookie running backs do not perform well in their rookie years. Now, a lot of that is you look at them joining teams that are bad and aren't able to make it. But I also think the wear and tear on a running back, when you start talking about a 18-week season, 17-game season, the length starts wearing you down. I also particularly like Bill Merritt. I think that you look at some of the production that he had last year with the rotating group of quarterbacks that he had. I think that you have a seventh round kid on a rookie deal. I want to give him a little bit of runway and see if he can be the next Alfred Morris. See if he and Jaden can find that lightning. That being said, if they pick Jeremiah Love, I would be entirely okay with it because that guy is I think, going to be a stud in the long run. I just think that you have somebody there on a cheap contract who I think can be, a number one type running back in the league now. And there are other places that this team needs to build out its depth, particularly as you start looking beyond, just one season.
Yeah, crazy. It's like a movie plot. The twist last season, like, have you ever seen that GIF of Andy in Toy Story where he drops Woody and he's like, "I don't want to play with you anymore"? Where, like, last season, a lot of Washington Twitter wanted to give Bill RB1 reps and wanted to give him the ball a lot. As soon as the offseason comes around, it's like, no, no, I want Jeremiah Love over everything, and just throwing Bill by the wayside, which is always staggering and funny to me. Sorry, Goody, you had a question for Mitch.
Yeah, not so much a question, but just like your excitement about Chig and this offense, it really brought something to me. Whereas I feel like having him in this offense, it reminds me of Pierre Garcon when he was here. Just the way that he was able to take the ball and just run with anger. The yards at, the yak and the run after the catch. I just feel like once he's able to kind of really get that groove and really settle in and define his role, I feel like he's going to be just a lethal weapon in this offense. I think it's very overlooked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's as much as Zach Ertz was a great receiving tight end, he wasn't a downfield threat. He wasn't a yak threat. And that's not taking anything away from Zach, who was a great player for the Commanders for a couple seasons. But having somebody in the middle of the field that can really expose the defense. Think about the way that, Bobby Wagner was exposed at times last year on the Commanders' defensive side of the ball. There's nobody in the middle of that offense, the Commanders' offense, that had the ability to take advantage of mismatches like that. And I think Chigakonkwo will be somebody that can do that. And you look at some of his, RAS athletics numbers, and the quickness and the speed are things that really stand out.
Yeah, absolutely. And also his samurai outfits, they absolutely do.
That was something, all right.
That was definitely something. He had the whole get up on. I hate how people talk about aura so much. Like, please stop doing this. You're killing me.
Listen, I'm 40. I don't know that I can be talking about aura. Chig is 27, I think. Is he getting a little old for aura? Feels a little old for aura to me.
Well,
if you guys are a lot closer to that age,
he did say this. He did say the kids would call this aura or something like that. So he referenced it down to he passed it down.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would be saying that about Bobby at this point in his career, Mitch. But in regards to corners, how do you think that's going to play out this year? The one thing that Durante Jones really put into cement at his presser was versatility, positional flexibility, right? And obviously having Amik Robertson, who has background in playing outside and inside. Same thing with Mikey Samerstill. Trey Amos, really, we haven't been able to see him inside. But how do you think those corners are going to play out? And do you think that's a position they will target in the draft? That's one that they didn't really add heavily into in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, you had Mansour Delane run, a 4.40 today?
Yeah.
At the LSU Pro Day. When you talk about pick 7, that's somebody else that I'd be very interested in taking. The way that I see it playing out right now, I think you have Mikey and Trey on the outside, and then Amik Robertson kind of plays some slot. I think I think you see him play some of that nickel safety when they bring 3 safeties on the field. I think he's a guy that can do a bunch of different things. I think people get caught up so much in PFF numbers and ratings and stuff like that, and I think I've said to you guys on this, and I say on our Beltway Football Pod all the time, like, you got to take those with a grain of salt. They're judging what they're seeing on the play without knowing what responsibilities lie where. And I think a couple places where that stands out even more than elsewhere is safety coverage and O-line play. I think those are the 2 toughest things. If you don't know a diagram of a play, to understand what their concepts are, I think it's tough to grade someone a plus or a minus on every particular play. Amik played a fair amount of safety last year with the Lions, mostly due to injury. I think when you get him inside and let him use some of that physicality and athleticism in there, I think he'll be a pretty good slot corner / third safety on the field, depending on what they're going to be in. But to me, maybe I'm overly excited about Trey Amos. I think the kid is on a path to be a stud.
Yeah.
He was having a really good year last year before he got hurt, and quite frankly, I'm excited to see him come back. And I think Nick Cross was a huge signing for the secondary. I know we're talking corners, but I think having somebody like Nick Cross in there is going to help everybody out a ton. And the pass rush being able to get to the quarterback, that's also going to help a whole lot. Bringing in all those edge rushers who, and athletic linebackers, I think will all go a very long way in helping out the corners and not having to cover for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds of play.
Yeah, and definitely adding new cologne for Durante Jones and the Leo Chanel line is going to be phenomenal for this defense of being able to get after the passer. And one guy from the slot that you would absolutely love is Keontae Scott from Miami. I think he ran a 4.3 today himself. Yeah, he is incredible. Just his game film alone, just from the slot, being a blitzer type guy and also covering, he's very, very good. So that's somebody to keep your eye on. But my next question for you, I asked this to the guys, and it was probably a dumb question for you, Mitch, but which side of the ball got the most help in free agency?
I hope to God I know you all well enough that you said defense.
I had to play the contrarian.
Everyone said defense except one guy that's wearing sunglasses with a corncob pipe.
I mean, it's not even remotely close. It's defense by leaps and bounds, and
we agree too much on this show, Mitch. I had to mix it up a little bit.
When it's that obvious, it's okay. You don't have to be a contrarian. Not everyone. Not every show has to have Stephen A. Smith that just makes stuff up to argue with Skip Bayless or whatever. Like, be you. It's defense. Just say it's defense.
I'm doing my unk bit, okay, Mitch. I'm doing my unk bit.
You can't do your unk bit when the 40-year-old is hanging out here.
Well, Hall's not too far behind you as well. He's close to being called unk, but he's got that hat on, which he's saving himself just a little bit. But to wrap this up, Mitch, I only have a couple questions for you. Based on what they've done in free agency, based on what we know is going to possibly be available at 7. You either know there's going to be a very good offensive weapon or defensive weapon available at 7. That's concrete. It's not crazy to say there's somebody very good going to be there for Washington. Are you in the mindset at this point after free agency to say you want to stay put and get that elite blue chip player, or are you thinking of trading back to get more capital?
That's an extremely loaded question. Like, yes, I'd love to trade back and add more, add a couple 2s and a 3. I think it depends on how far you're trading back. They're at 7. If I get myself in the 10 to 12 range, 13 range, 14, maybe I'm interested in that. But I don't want to go back into the 20s or out of the first round altogether, because as much as they've done good stuff in free agency, you still got to get some more elite players in here.
Yeah.
You got to get, you got to keep this, keep getting these younger guys in who are uber athletic and hopefully we'll be able to flourish in your systems. There's worlds in which I would trade back, but I wouldn't go super far back. So if we're talking about going from 7 to 12 and you add, a second or a third or whatever, like, yeah, I'd be into that. But I think when you start talking about what some of these big time trade ups, and if you really want to add multiple draft picks, this team isn't in a place yet where it can, rest on its laurels. It's got to go out and get some more big time playmakers.
People's heads would explode if Washington traded back from 7 with the Cowboys and allowed them to get Jeremiah Love, which they just paid Javonte Williams. Wouldn't happen, but I'm just saying, people's heads would explode if that happened, Mitch.
These in-division trades don't happen very often.
No, they do not. And I just know the reaction on Twitter would be insane. Now, did they?
Real quick, since we're throwing crazy hypotheticals out there in division, would you trade a 1 and a 3 next year for AJ Brown?
No.
No, thank you.
I understand the thought process, though.
No. Listen, I just wanted to test to make sure that all of our heads were still screwed on straight. I'm a little concerned about you, but I'm glad we're all on the same page here.
I had to be the contrarian. I had to be.
It's okay to group think on that one.
No, you always go against the grain. But I understand the deep threat, because when you look at Alec Pierce, Mitch, that's what he provides, is the deep threat, just that normal possession wide receiver that can attack you vertically. And I think that's what they really covet, and one of the reasons why Carnell Tate does make a lot of sense for Washington at 7. And just being able to be that number 2 wide receiver, stretch the field for you. And another reason why they brought in Dami Brown back in here, just as another piece to add. You can never not have too many weapons. But next question for you.
Hold on real quick.
Do
you think they're going to add Brandon Ayuk whenever he finally gets his release papers from John Lynch and those guys?
I think there's a lot of questions that come with it. To me, I'll just say that if I'm the Commanders, I have a contract in mind. I present it to Brandon. If you want to sign on the dotted lines, love to have you. If he takes that and starts shopping it around and starts fighting for money, adios, Ayuk. But to me, I think the biggest question with this, and I brought it up in a couple different places, is no one wants to. You don't want to give him guaranteed money necessarily, because no one's 100% sure where he's at. How do you structure a incentive laden contract for a guy who's shown an ability to walk away? If you structure it, whether it's based on yards and touchdowns and whatnot, and they get 4, 5, 6, 7 games into the season, and it doesn't look like he's going to get there, are you concerned that that's going to affect him upstairs as far as he goes? Do you make it game? Do you make it game driven? Do you make it practice driven? I think there's just a lot of questions about. Everyone wants to give him an incentive laden, $7, $8, $9 million deal. I think you have to bear down on what are those incentives. How do you structure a contract for a guy? It's not all his fault what happened in San Fran. I think the 49ers bear a fair amount of the blame too, but you have to question how you structure that thing. And I think that's a bigger question than anything, whether he would agree to a creative structure within a 1-year deal.
Yeah, I'd put it, if for an incentive, I'd put in their meetings. Being able to be on time for meetings and actually present at meetings would be one of the incentives I would put in a contract. If I have my corncob pipe and my GM cap on, of course.
Assuming the Niners get rid of him before OTA's minicamps, certainly the incentives start with paying him to show up there to OTAs and minicamps and training camp and all that stuff. Anyway, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
It's the gun to your head segment. Not too aggressively, of course, but even though it is.
It feels a little aggressive.
It does. If you had to choose between Jeremiah Love, Jordan Tyson, or David Bailey at 7,
David Bailey.
Why?
Immediately, I think he's a game changer. I think he's a double-digit sack guy right away. Jordan Tyson. I've said my piece about Jeremiah Love. Jordan Tyson couldn't stay healthy in college. Wasn't able to run at the combine. Let's see if he's able to run at his pro day. But we're coming off a team that had catastrophic injuries, from the first snap of the season through the end of the year. Are you really going to put your chips in the barrel of a guy who consistently has hamstring injuries over and over and over again? Doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense.
Yeah. It is funny because people brought up RG3 with Jaden and that whole thing, and the one thing with Jordan Tyson is it does reek of but it gives you the hint of Josh Doxson, where it's like we've seen the first round wide receiver, that big playability that just for some reason had a phantom injury If you guys can remember back when, like, literally Jay Gruden, they brought an MRI, they did a scan and everything trying to find the injury, and they couldn't find it. Do you guys remember that? I'm not going crazy,
Yeah.
right? That happened.
With Doxson.
Yeah.
Oh, trust me, I was a huge Josh Doxson guy. When we drafted him, I was like jumping up and down, and then how it played out, I was just like, I did not expect that.
That was a phantom injury, right? Like, nobody knew. Like, if I ever talked to Jay Gruden, that's the one thing I would ask him is like, so what was going on with Doxson? Like, what was that injury? To this
Didn't
day,
he like not love football? Like, didn't he fall in that category of like the player that doesn't love football?
Had he gone out there and had 3,000 yard seasons in a row, no one would say a boo about that, right? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
that's how this world works. Like, when you're performing and at your top, you can do whatever the heck you want, But when things start going south, it's he doesn't love football, or he's not putting in the time, or whatever it may be. Just real quick, the opposite side, obviously, of all of these guys is what if you get Deshaun Jackson? What if you get the guy with elite speed who tracks deep balls, which we've seen, and can take the top off defense? Like, it's not. I'm not saying there's not a positive side to the Jordan Tyson thing. It just worries me with the injuries.
No, I totally get it, and it's warranted. It is a concern, of course. The other gun to your head that I have, you have Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Love, or David Bailey.
I mean, you're not going wrong any which way you go there. I have been on the Carnell Tate train. I'm gonna stay on that train. I got my conductor's hat. I got my train whistle. I'm ready to roll with Carnell Tate as my oppo receiver from Terry.
My man, Mitch, I can't thank you enough for joining us on this episode. I know you're rushing back home. I really do appreciate you taking some time. Didn't even get dressed to be able to hop on here with us. I truly do appreciate it.
For the people listening, yes, I am wearing clothes. I am dressed.
No. You know what I meant. Reed's not here. He would have meant that. But before you get out of here, Mitch, if you would have plugged your social media handle in your show, sir.
Mitch _Tischler on Instagram and Twitter. Beltway Football Podcast. Come check us out. Doing a ton of stuff on YouTube. Also anywhere you get your good podcasts. And make sure you listen to my guys here. I love coming on with you. It's always a good time. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, Mitch. Have a great week,
Always
brother. Enjoy the
it.
pro day bonanza. All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Mitch Tischler. Always appreciate his time. Although I learned that this show has now become a lot like Twitter, where I cannot act as the contrarian because I get bludgeoned and stoned to death, apparently now. But we did have the question from the Colonel earlier that we did not get to answer. Hall, do you want to answer it first?
Yeah. I just got to hear the question again.
Are we comfortable enough with free agency that we can go best player available in the draft, or are we still chasing an edge rusher or wide receiver?
I don't think they're chasing the edge rusher. I'm not going to say they're chasing a wide receiver, but they are, per the team, putting it out to like the John Kimes and the beat reporters of the world. They are looking for a strong number two to like complement Terry McLaurin, but I wouldn't say that they're like really chasing after a guy. I think that they are kind of slow playing, obviously, the Brandon Ayuk thing, see how that plays out. And they're looking at the draft, maybe possibly that number 7 pick with a guy like Carnell Tate, like Mitch was just talking about, or maybe they trade back a couple spots, get a guy like Mekhi Lemon or whatever it may be. But I don't think that they're chasing either an edge guy or a wide receiver, but I will say that they definitely did enough. This is all we wanted Adam Peters to do this free agency, where just get the roster, get it younger, and get it to the point where you get to the draft where it's like you don't have to focus on, we need that guy or we need that type of guy. So I do think that he did enough so far to go BPA come 30 days from now.
I do think it's funny that you said that they're slow playing the Brandon Ayuk thing. Like, the guy's not in Alcatraz. Like, do you want?
No, I
Adam...
mean, like San Francisco's like slow playing it.
I know. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want Adam Peters to bake him a cake with a file in it to try to get him
He
out
knows
of
some
there?
guys to be like, man, just do me a solid. Damn.
Yeah. I gotcha. Colonel, I think they're chasing it. I'm not sure if 100% they're chasing it, but they're very invested into it, because if you look at both of those positions in wide receiver and edge rusher, you can even make the argument for running back, that they have one guy on the roster that's going to be here for multiple years. Edge rusher in particular only has Odafe Owe, like at the moment. That's it after this season.
Really only like a 2-year deal if you really like break it down and look at it.
Right, and then with wide receiver, Terry is possibly having out in his contract after this season. They only have a handful of guys like Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey, still under contract post this year, and then running back, it's only Bill. So I do think that it is an invested kind of position where if you're looking future wise and the now, it's obviously it's coveted and it's what they want to do. And I do think that they are very invested in finding the complement for Terry and getting that deep threat possession wide receiver. Say what you want. I don't care what any of you guys say. They have showcased this blueprint for what they want in a number 2 wide receiver. Noah Brown in 2024, I think, led the league in pass interference penalties and deep balls. Treylon Burks has shown the ability to be vertical threat as much as he wasn't utilized like that last season. I think his injury had a lot to do with it. And we know Diami Brown specializes in being that deep threat, being over 6 foot. So you're looking at the taller guys. Do I think that they are biting at the bit or that it's a necessity? No, but I do think they're in a position where they feel comfortable with adding either of those two and not having to thrust them in right away. Because even when they drafted Jaden Colonel, they forced Jaden to earn the spot. They still had Mariota, saying Mariota could be the starting quarterback, and Jaden had to win it. I think the first-round pick now is going to be in a similar circumstance. If they go wide receiver or edge, they'd have to earn that spot. They're not going to be thrusted into it. So that's the best way to be able to explain it. Do I think that's 100% a need? No, but I think it's at a position that they want long-term, and they wouldn't have to. It wouldn't be given it to them right. It wouldn't be given to them right away. Sorry, that was brutal. Next question from the Colonel. A goodie, can you shed any light on the kicker who ran a 4.4 740 and can make a 70-yard field goal? Murphy? Even Rico's street score spent over 5 minutes raving about him. And what would make DC this likely destination? A dozen other teams would want that capability as well.
Yeah, in terms of insight, I got just about as much as you got. I saw the headline. I clicked on the link. Looked at the pictures and read a couple of sentences and just kept it moving. But yeah, definitely really cool, exciting. For that guy, right? He's getting a lot of buzz right now, and we know in this league right now, like the kicking position is becoming more and more of a premium. After David Bailey kind of setting this like superstar status of like, check us out, this is how we roll. People are trying to copy that, right? They want even Cam Little, right? I'm not going to, shout out to Jacksonville there, but those guys that are able to really boot that ball from basically half field, right? That's a huge weapon to have as a team, knowing that you can get down to the 50-yard line, 48, 40-yard line and be able to still put points on the board. Just because his measurables are showing that doesn't mean he's going to actually perform. A lot of that kicking position comes down to being in the pressure, right, and being able to perform after the snap. The rush is on, the wind is blowing. Like, I haven't seen him do that. I've seen that he can run fast and that he can jump high and all that good stuff, right? But ultimately, I think that's really going to come down to the pedigree of, can he perform under the lights? Even if there's some, super, mad scientist, scout, or GM out there that's really thinking like, hey, I could use him as a kicker, but I could also use him in another aspect on my team. That would be interesting to see. But again, only time's going to tell. But as far as giving insight on him, I only know as much as the article had explained.
Yeah. So with the kicker thing, like, I get the fascination with it. It's like with a kicker, I understand the trick play aspect of it. But really, like, I did find it laughable that a kicker ran that fast. And I was like, whoa. It's like, does a kicker really need to run fast? Like, just make the damn field goal. Just kick. And I'm wise enough beyond my years at this point, Colonel, to know that it's funny because when you talk about a kicker and you talk about their combine stuff, which is usually not what happens with kickers, right? Like, they're not talked about as combine participants and what their measurements are and what they run and their data. But what they typically bring up is their field goal percentage, what they made in college, what is their career percentage, what's their longest made in a game. That isn't talked about enough. And so I would like to investigate a little bit more into finding out how good of a kicker he really is, because I'm sure Jake Cutler at this point can hit a 60, 70-yard pass, but efficiency-wise, I'm not sure he'd be the best quarterback right now to be able to have on your football team if you're smelling what I'm smoking. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's a cool idea. It's a cool story, and I'm sure somebody will give him a shot. And I just know here in Washington we have bad luck with kickers. We're very moody.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I know as much as the next person knows for the most part that he's just a athletic dude that can kick the ball 60, 70 yards. But I just muted myself. They don't really talk about like what he did like during like the season, like game wise. They just talk about like, well, he drilled a 70-yarder and then he hit 12 of 13 during the workout. So it's not like we don't really like you gotta like I guess look up what he actually did like during the season for what is it like San Antonio, Texas, something like that. Texas, San Antonio, or something, whatever team it was. But yeah, it's also weird that like a dude that athletic and run like a 4.47, whatever it was, like you couldn't play like wide receiver or something like that. Like, why are you just the kicker? That's also like kind of weird to me. So, but like I said, the trick aspect of like you can run a lot of trick plays. You got a creative special teams coach that thinks outside the box. You could probably do some pretty cool stuff with that type of guy like that. But again, it's just weird that you run a 4.47. You're that athletic, and the only spot you can be is a kicker. I don't know.
Yep, Greg the third leg, man. And anybody wondering, Hall does have a baby. You shouldn't be wondering if he's watching anything that he's not supposed to be. I know that. I'm just saying that is his baby girl. So give some
So
grace.
I got a question.
What's your question, Greg?
Maybe so just very curious. Will Harris, right? We know he got banged up early in the season. When we brought him in last year, we were kind of excited for what he could bring to this defense and just overall the player himself. But it seems like that whole, thing has just disappeared as if he's not on the team, which he still is, right? He's coming back. He's going to be healthy. I think, like, where do you see his role being, in the secondary?
So
I think he's still the starter, maybe, or I think it'll be between him and Quan Martin battling it out in camp between opposite Nick Cross.
I do think that we do have to take a step back, right? And I think Zone Runner made a really good point on Twitter, talk about Durante Jones and Brian Flores' defensive system, where it's really a 2-4-5. So they have two down linemen, more the thicker defensive tackles. Then they have the four linebackers, and then 5 DBs. So you can either have 2 corners and 3 safeties on the field, or just 2 safeties and 3 corners based on how you want to divvy it up. You could even bring Will Harris down into a linebacker kind of way, even Nick Cross to that extent. So it adds fluidity in what you want to be able to do. And so I think Will Harris will be able to be utilized in that sort of capacity. I think he's very good against tight ends and helping out in zone coverage, especially in the red zone. And so I think that's like an area where he could be selected at and used. It's just another weapon for Durante Jones, and the best man wins. And I think Hall is onto something with the free safety. I'm not sure how many snaps he got last season as a free, because obviously it wasn't all that much with Quan on the field. But it is a very, very good question, because what like Will Harris has been passed by the wayside, you could say. So it is a good question. Now the next question we have is from the Discord. Sorry, I didn't know Hall went first. I'm sorry. This question from Deluxe: do you think any more players receive extensions? If so, who?
Who are we going to? Are we going to Hall?
If you're ready, you got it.
I mean, yeah, I'm just trying to think who's up for.
I was
who'd be
hoping
up
you were
for
going to him
extension.
first, but I was like, ugh.
Early bird gets a worm, baby.
Who gets extended? Would this be like during the season or before the season starts?
I would say before the season. Whatever the next extension is, it doesn't have to be this offseason. It could be next season.
Okay.
Who's going to be the next extension?
I mean, the easy answer would be Jaden Daniels, but that'll be next year. This year, I don't really see anyone getting another extension. You could probably maybe throw Luvu out there because he's in the last year of his deal, but that could also be like a wait and see how he adapts to the new system, and does he get back to 2024 Luvu, or is he more of the 2025 like where did he go type of Luvu? So yeah, I don't think anyone this year gets another extension, but I mean obviously next year the big
I'll go
one's going to
Deron
be
Payne. I'll go
Deron
Deron
Payne?
Yeah, I'll take Payne.
That's going. So with this one, it's gonna a lot has to go right in order for it to really transpire. It's not somebody that everyone's kind of thinking about, but I'll go with Van Jefferson. I think that he's gonna be the next guy to be able to get extended.
Can't even like say that without even laughing.
I know. it ruins the joke. Reed is so good at it where he doesn't laugh or smile right away. Now the next question we have is from Deluxe. Based on safety depth, could Martin be switching to corner? So Deluxe is on the same wavelength as you are, Goody, in terms of this. What do you think, Hall?
Yeah, I remember going back to when he got drafted. They talked about like, oh, this is a guy that can play free safety, strong safety, slot corner. You can maybe put him on some outside corner because he has the boundary to help him out.
He played in
So he was a
one
guy-
game. I think he played in one game at outside corner or a couple.
Yeah,
at
exactly.
Illinois.
Yeah, so he's a guy that they played kind of pretty much all throughout the secondary. Had a lot of versatility. Durante Jones mentioned him by name about how they were scouting him coming out of Illinois, and they liked his versatility. So I do think that Durante Jones probably has a plan in place for a guy like Quan Martin. It's just about does he get back to the 2024 version of Quan Martin, or is it going to be more of the 2025 version of Quan Martin? So I think the potential is definitely there for him to get back to the level he was playing at beforehand. But I think it's a wait and see type of thing, just because everyone had such high expectations last year coming into the season, and I mean, we can all say that was pretty much a big flop by him last year. But I think that the potential is there. It's just do they play him again? What does Durante Jones see him as? Do they see him as a slot corner that can get after the quarterback and blitz, play the run? Do you see him as a free safety, strong safety, all three of those? So it's just wait and see for me.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that we're going to probably see the 2026 Quan Martin, unless he has been able to master time travel, of course. It's funny because him coming out playing with Devon Witherspoon, that defense was all over the field. Johnny Newton was on that team as well. This was a very, very good secondary that not Leslie Frazier, what's his old Chicago Bears coach.
It's Lovie Smith.
Lovie Smith's defense. He had them flying around, man. I love Devin Witherspoon coming out of that draft.
Slave on them sidelines with that beard and all that.
Well, I was just talking to my coworker about Devin Witherspoon today because he's a Seahawks fan. I was like, dude, I can't tell you how much I love Devin Witherspoon coming into that draft process. I thought that kid was amazing. And Quan kind of swept by the wayside. And then when we drafted him, you looked at him and you saw that he could be utilized in a lot of areas in a lot of ways. But very athletic, sort of undersized. But he does have the ability to be able to come up and help you in the slot. The big question, though, Arch, is what happened with Mikey when he was at slot? In his first year, what happened when Mikey was there? Teams started running when he was in slot. They would bring that slot receiver over, hugging the offensive line and the tight end, right? And then they'd run right at Mikey because they knew if they pulled somebody, Mikey wasn't getting off that block. And they were able to hit that outside and just bludgeon us to death on that every single time. So they said, you know what? Let's move Mikey outside to get him away from the run game, bring a bigger body in to help a little bit. With Quan Martin and his tackling issues as of late, do you feel comfortable with Quan being closer line of scrimmage in those run-down situations? And that's just an honest question. I like Quan Martin a lot. I'm just asking. And I understand that we're thinking in just a pass kind of situation, but I do think that you're running into the issue of trying to make something work. And how long are you going to allow that to go on until you pull the plug? I think that's a big question we have to answer here, because that's one thing.
I think with that, Quan maybe last year didn't have his best season, right? And the missed tackles was the most glaring issue. But I don't think that was necessarily a career kind of default to him. I think it was just a season. And he also has a shoulder injury, right? Prior to last season, so that could have been the situation. But again,
I don't know. He had two banged up shoulders in 2024 and played damn good football.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I stand down. But I feel like just because he had missed tackles last season does not mean that he would not be suitable in that position facing the run. Because if you look at Nick Cross, they said that he led in tackles but also had the most missed tackles as well. So it's like, where do you really stand with that? But I think Quan could get it right.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's just for me personally, I've felt for for a couple years that Quan is at his best at free safety. I think the tackling is a legitimate thing. My coworker actually had a shoulder injury in high school, and when he came back, he had talked about how he was very hesitant in tackling because of his shoulder injury. So what his coach ended up doing is making him line up in front of all of his teammates, and he had to smack each one with his shoulder all the way down the line as hard as he possibly could in order to beat that out of him. To say, stop being scared, your shoulder's fine, just go ahead and do it. Maybe that's an issue with Quan. I don't know. I'm sure the NFLPA probably wouldn't allow that to happen in this
So
day
that's
and age.
good old school coaching right there. I miss
Right.
those days.
He says, my coworkers say, it fixed me right up, man. I wasn't worried about that anymore. It's funny because he played against Chris Godwin in high school, and
No way, wow.
he was also my coworker was also the kicker, and they told him before the game, do not kick it to Chris Godwin. And he said, you know what I did? I kicked it to Chris Godwin, and he scored a touchdown. I got chewed out.
Makes sense. He's in the NFL now, so that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So all that being said, I do think Quan can play at slot. I just think that you're getting in that touchy subject of what are you going to have Jeremy back there at free safety being able to cover ground? And I think Quan's issues last season were just a snowball down a hill of the issues, not only in the trenches, but in the middle of the field that were rolling down to Quan and really put him on an island. And I think that things are going to change now. I think that if Quan actually has pressure on the quarterback in a quick manner, Quan actually might look really good at being able to get some turnovers and being able to get some tackles. But if they have all day and they know exactly what you're in, it's a different story for Quan Martin, in my personal opinion. I don't want to panic and throw him to slot because he wasn't great last year, when all that needs to change is we need to bring more pressure and the secondary members are going to look better. Just my personal opinion. Let's see if we have one more that was submitted. This one from Tim Towner. Mansour Delane posted a 4.35 40-yard dash at his LSU Pro Day. Would have been the second fastest for corners at the combine. So his question is, Goody, do we take Delane at 7?
Do we take Delane? I mean, it really, we're in a really good position, you know. Imagine being able to just, you know, kind of walk in and just grab what you want. It's not like you're taking scraps. A couple of the early picks are kind of already allocated, so you're really putting more and more of that talent towards the number 7 pick. So that funnel is just kind of sitting in our laps. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I feel like you may be able to get him a couple spots down. You know, even, you know, 2 to 3 spots further down, I think you could get him still. And with that, you could also obviously get more picks and just add to your overall haul for that class. But I wouldn't be opposed to it. You know, I think people are too particular about where it has to be, you know, who the pick has to be and why it has to be that. I just feel like, you know, you go into this, you know what's in front of you, and you're prepared to make that pick when it comes. I wouldn't be opposed to it. Just adding to the secondary. You know, I was listening to Fred Smoot, and, you know, Washington kind of has a track record of having some pretty decent corners over our franchise history, whether through the draft or acquiring. So I can see it shaping up that way. Having a young Mikey, Trey, and then having, you know, the LSU corner come in, like that's a great foundation, right? And then you have your new coordinator that's an aggressive SOB. Give him something to work with. Give him something to you know, plant the stake on. So I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. You know, give me that.
Yeah, I understand the mindset. With Mansour Delane, he is very structurally sound. He does strap up on corners, or on wide receivers very well. He does have the ability to get picked off a little bit on vertical threats, but the biggest issue for him was the rest of the LSU defense was getting feasted on besides A.J. Halsey. And so they could go in other different ways to be able to attack them. And whenever they did go at Mansour Delane, there was nothing there because he took everything away. So I do think pairing him up with Trey Amos is intriguing. It's a really thoughtful thing to be able to look at and say, wow, if you added him, that could really benefit in going against some heavy wide receiver units like George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, for example. But I think that it's very telling that Durante Jones and Brian Flores believed that pressure helped secondary more than anything. And I think that's where really it goes into the thought process there. Because we brought up the question on the Commanders draft show, what's probably the least important position on defense for Durante Jones? And I'd be willing to argue it is corner, just given at what they did last year in Minnesota. Obviously, Durante could think differently at this point, but they had Fabian Moreau and Jeff Okudah, right? Like they were able to get it done with not having, huh?
I don't know. I was gonna say they had Fabian Monroe out there getting starter snaps, so that should tell you something.
So, like, I think that that's the one position, but I will say that it is intriguing to think about with Mansour Delane. The big question, though, is because he wasn't heavily targeted at LSU, when he stepped into the pros, would it now him being the one being targeted because, like, you'd have to choose between Trey Amos and company? Like, would things change or would he look differently? And I don't think it's that crazy to ask that question. I do believe in him a lot. But I also know that there's a lot of capable corners in this draft. You got Chris Johnson, Devin Marshall from NC State, who's very similar to Mansour Delane, and that nobody wanted to attack him. They attacked everyone else in NC State. If you watch any big pass play against NC State's defense, it's on every other corner and DB rather than being on Devin Marshall. It's insane. They targeted 7 and 21 all day long, but they just did not go after 6 because of how good he was. So I think Mansour Delane is a lot like that in that sort of scenario. But there's a lot of capable guys in this draft that you could feel very comfortable with. I talked about Keontae Scott, the slot corner as well, where we leave Mikey outside. But I think Keontae Scott really fits with what Adam Peters wants to do. Shout out to my boy Smoke for finding him on our Commanders draft show. That dude is electrifying, and he would be an absolute piece for Durante Jones to work with. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you made it this far, you're a freaking champion. I appreciate you guys. I apologize for Hall's Van Jefferson slander. It's unwarranted and it's not acceptable.
But we'll have a talking to.
Yeah, we'll get past it. We'll get past
Van Jefferson, if you ever watch this show, it ain't personal.
No, he's not watching the show. All right, everybody. We will see you guys again probably later on the week, early next week. We'll see how it goes down with the pro days and everything of the sort. If any big news comes out. Prayers to the families of the LaGuardia Airport pilots who lost their lives today. It was terrible. Absolutely terrible. I saw the footage. Horrible. All right, everybody. Terrible. We'll see you again next week. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall.
Booty.
And we'll see you guys then. Washington football. Woo!
Peace.
What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.